everybody. How are we doing? I can see those with 2 cups in their hand are much more excited than those who don't. So who does not have 2 cups in their hand? Raise your hand. Everybody has 2 empty cups? There's somebody right there. Oh, we've got some other people over here as well. So I do have something to say about this presentation, is that I was not intending to pour anything. But yesterday I brought something for the Whiskey Summit. And those who missed out on the Whiskey Summit, if you were there yesterday, you will gain today. Because instead we will be trying some Canadian whiskey that we brought from Canada. So we have 2 to start off with. Well, the first one to start off with is a double oaked lot 40 from 100% rye. And the second one is also lot 40, made in cherry wood casks. So we've got 2 different ones that you can try side by each. I hope you enjoy them. And the lovely Heather will come around helping to pour. We don't have any problems with that, right? It's a good way to start off the presentation. Nobody minds? Okay, good. All right, well, you guys, is it okay if I come down here? Yeah. You'll understand in just a second why I'm down here and not up there. So my name is Andrea, and I will be talking to you today about designation strategies. I have a background in winemaking. I have an MBA from the Royal Agricultural University in the Cotswolds. I also worked for Moët Hennessy UK in sales and marketing for a few years. And then I worked at Thames Distillers as a distiller. Learned a lot, wanted to come home back to Canada, started my own gin brand, and then I accidentally got a job as a full-time professor of artisan distilling at Niagara College. I am currently still a full-time distiller there, but I got kind of bored after a while, and me being me, I decided that I was going to pursue something else. And I decided to do a doctorate at Heriot-Watt University. Anyone heard of Heriot-Watt before? Yeah, they know a few things about brewing, distilling, and that whole thing. But what really irked me is I didn't really start this doctorate to just accomplish a doctorate. What irked me is I kept on doing a class called sensory analysis in my classrooms. And it was back home in Canada, hence we're tasting Canadian whiskey today. And every single time we would talk about Japanese whiskey, people got really excited. And then afterwards we talk about Scotch whiskey and people got really excited. And then we would talk about Canadian whiskey. And it's like the whole room would just deflate instantly. And I'm like, why? If we're in Canada, why are we not excited about Canadian whiskey? We're in Texas right now. Are we excited about Texan whiskey? Yeah, we are. So I thought, why are people not excited about Canadian whiskey? But then I also realized there is a specific connotation every single time you pick up a bottle of whiskey. Where it's from adds its reputation, will add to its perceived value. And why is that? So I decided to actually explore a doctorate. And the title of my dissertation is Consumer Values and the Role of Country of Origin in the Whiskey Market. So I am exploring where a product is from, how it will affect its perceived value. And I started going down this whole rabbit hole that I didn't think that I would go down whatsoever. So I started asking myself, how do you convey where your product is from? Is it based on a country? Is it based on a state? Is it based on a region? And how does this affect the value of your product? And then I started thinking, does a Kentucky bourbon fetch the same price as a bourbon from another state? We're talking about a bourbon that's made in Michigan. Does that carry the same clout? Do people think of it the same way? Does it have the same collective reputation? I can see some people going, yeah, no, I don't know. Hands up if you think yes. Hands up if you think no. Okay, so we all know the answer to it. We just don't want to say it. That's fine too. Let's play a little game. I'm a professor. I don't like to talk that much at people. I like to talk with them. If I say the word fine leather, what country do you associate with this with? Italy. There we go. If I say automotive engineering, Germany, Detroit, that is one of the things. High fashion, Paris, France. I love how nobody said Italy. Interesting point. How about fine wine? Chile, France. Anything else? Napa Valley. Innovative technology. United States. Go ahead. What are you saying over there?
Japan.
Japan, sorry? Silicon Valley, yeah, for sure. Anything else we want to say? Maple syrup. You're breaking my heart. He said New Hampshire. Come on, guys. Yeah. Like, I gotta have something. We gotta have something, these Canadians here, right?
Oh, we
Yeah, exactly. How about cheap, fast production? China. So, do we realize that there is a strong link often between collective reputation and certain industries? There can be. But if I'm talking about toothpaste, for example, does that have the same relationship back to a country? If I say toothpaste made in Germany versus toothpaste made in France, is it valued at a different price point? Nobody really. Do you really care? No, you don't. Which means, essentially, that it depends on the type of product that you have, whether or not collective reputation has a strong relationship to it. So let's go back to who can share collective reputation. Is it just people who live in the same region? Or live in the same country? Or can we think broader? So is it just your next door neighbor? Or is it somebody who has a distillery halfway across the world? It can literally be anyone that has something in common with you and what you produce. So it's actually a much broader concept that when people are realizing. Whose responsibility is it to manage collective reputation? It's a bit of a trick question, isn't it?
probably yours.
The question is it the government's responsibility? Or is it the distillery's responsibility? Or is it the federal government? Is it the state government? There's so many different layers. And at this point in time, sometimes everyone's just pointing at different people saying, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. But it's got to be somebody's, right? Somebody's got to do something about it. And again, does the bourbon hold the same value in every state? Why does collective reputation matter to you? So going back to the basics, collective reputation at its core is an inherited reputation. Who here is associated with a distillery? Who here was the very first person to start the distillery in their area? You guys are the people who are starting the collective reputation in your area. Who are the people that started a distillery after the first people? You are the ones who are inheriting that collective reputation. And it works as a signaling quality to consumers. So when somebody goes somewhere and goes, I went to a distillery from, where are you from?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts whiskey. What is it? What is the first thing that pops into the consumer's head when they think about that? And it will be that very first experience that they had, and then it will move forward to the next experience and so forth, and they will share it with other people around them. It is a shared identity, and it affects pricing and marketing. And this is the reason why ultimately, if you are associated with a distillery, you have to be aware of what your collective reputation is and where it's going and how you can change it. So as an academic, I said, oh, obviously collective reputation is a big thing in whiskey. But I couldn't just say that. Apparently in academia, you can't just, like my 3-year-old goes, because I said so. That does not work when writing a doctoral dissertation, apparently. So I had to go back to scratch and figure out what is whiskey and why does it have a strong correlation with collective reputation. And the first reason is it is a luxury good. It is a product, just like we talked about fine leather, we talked about high fashion, we talked about these different products that are luxury products that we often associate with collective reputation. Consumable goods, agricultural goods. When you think about a product, whether it's maple syrup, where is that from? It has a collective reputation and will affect its value. But also as a credence good. Has anyone heard this word credence before? Neither had I, actually. So nobody here knows what a credence good is? I'm going to pick on Heather. I know she knows exactly what a credence good is. A credence good is something that even when consumers can experience it and evaluate it, they may still not understand the quality of it. Because the reality is that a lot of people who taste whiskey don't understand it. And that's where collective reputation is even stronger, because if I can't tell whether it's a good quality by tasting it, that means the inherited value, the inherited reputation is so much stronger. So from my perspective, from an academic, I found this, I'm like, this is brilliant. My entire dissertation's done. I obviously had to do a little bit more work, but this proved that there is a strong correlation between the two of them. And I did some more digging. So how much do we think collective reputation can affect the value of your products? So I decided to find some incidences. Anyone hear of the 2008 dairy tainting scandal? Anyone remember that? One person over here. Anyone else? Yeah, over here. It was a very sad event. By no means am I trying to minimize it, but it had a significant effect on dairy coming out of China. And what ended up happening is those who were guilty of serving tainted products, their sales went down. Any guesses how much they went down? 75% over there? What do you? 100%, not 100%. Anyone else? 30. 84%. Okay, but do you think everybody who was producing dairy in China is actually guilty of this? No. So how much do you think those who were producing dairy products in China who did not actually produce tainted products, how much was their sales affected by? Higher than 50. Lower than 75. 64%. 64%. These people did nothing. They did nothing wrong, and yet their sales still went down 64%. Is that dramatic? Imagine that happened to your distillery. Okay, so let's talk about how would this affect the wine industry. Did anyone hear about the Austrian wine scandal of 1985? Anyone remember this? You remember what happened? So back in 1985, one person over here. Yeah. The Austrians thought it would be a really good idea to add glycol to their wines. Anyone else thinks that's a good idea? No, it obviously was not a very good idea. So there was only a few producers who did this, only a few. When the scandal broke, how much do you think Austrian wine exports went down by in percentage? Sorry? Higher than 84. Higher than 90.
Yeah.
95%.
Right.
So it went down by 95%. Do you think every single Austrian producer of wine was guilty of this? There were literally just a few. But based on the fact that all of them were known as Austrian wine producers, that declined by 95%, and it took them over 15 years to get back to the same production that they originally started in. So this is the dramatic effect that collective reputation can have on your industry. Oh, sorry. Here's the other thing to remember, is that once you have an established collective reputation, how hard is it to change? Do we think it's easy? Sorry?
It's easy to make it worse.
It's easy to make it worse. It's really easy to have a bad reputation. But how easy is it to change the average consumer's mind that what you used to sell that was bad is actually very good? I will tell you, it is extremely difficult to change that. It's actually called the bad reputation trap because it is so difficult, because once you fall into it, you cannot get out. So there's an incentive, there's obviously a cognitive bias. There is social proof in the cascade of information that whatever you sold or currently still sell is not of superior quality. And the cost in time to change that bad reputation is very, very dramatic. So easier to control the narrative before it exists, before you fall into that bad reputation trap, 100%. And that's the reason why I hope you're all here today. You realize that maybe we can do something for this. So you've heard a lot of key buzzwords happening these last few days, and I've heard it myself. Trust. And that's what consumers want. They want to pick up a bottle of whiskey from Massachusetts and have trust that it is good quality. But there are multiple ways that you can establish trust with the consumer. And these are mainly through two different processes, through establishing quality and authenticity. And I love and hate both of these words, because what does the word quality mean? What does quality mean? If you represent quality, you make a quality whiskey. Does it mean one thing? It could mean anything, right? It could absolutely mean anything. It is not a one-dimensional word. And that's up to you guys to figure out how you want to develop trust with the consumer through one of these two different things. Authenticity, same thing. Is that a one-dimensional word? Or are there many different ways that you can represent authenticity? And so next time you hear the word quality or authenticity, I want you to be like, in which way? What do you mean? Tell me more. And I ask this question all the time. I was at the Whiskey Summit yesterday asking the same question. They go, that's a good question. I go, yeah, I've thought about this through. So here are multiple ways that you can establish trust by emphasizing either authenticity or quality attributes. Are we talking about craftsmanship? Are we talking about heritage and history? Are we talking about transparency, attention to detail, terroir, flavor, tradition, reliability, or sustainability? So a great example of this, one of the things that always hurts my brain is, does everyone here like Scotch? Hands up if you like Scotch, right? I love Scotch, right? Scotch is fantastic. And why do we love Scotch? Why does Scotch have such a strong collective reputation? Any ideas? Can we identify on this board where they fall? Where is it on your bingo card? Tradition. Anything else? Flavoring. Yeah, anything else? Reliability, right? It is a tried and true tested product that you have trust. And through those, does it go into under quality or authenticity or both? Sorry? Quality? The Scot says quality. Do you guys agree? Do you want to fight her on it? No? Anyone else? So we know that there is that emphasis. Now let's go back. How about Japan? Who likes Japanese whiskey? We got one person who maybe, I don't know, depends on the day. Maybe not today for him. Okay. So some of us like Japanese whiskey. Do we think the image of Japanese whiskey is high or low when it comes to collective reputation? High, low?
What?
We got a few people saying high. Why? Because is it the history and the heritage of Japanese whiskey? How old is Japanese whiskey? 100 years old. How old is Scottish whiskey? Heather says forever. Do we trust her on that one? Yeah, close enough. We're good. So do we think it's based on their history and heritage? That's why we love Japanese whiskey? No, not at all. What's on their bingo card for this? Attention to detail, craftsmanship. And is that expressed through authenticity or quality? Quality. So the whole thing is, the way that I look at this, it's almost like if you are trying to develop trust with your consumer, you have to pick one of these two baskets or both of them, whether it is quality or authenticity, and decide what you want to put on your basket. That's on your bingo card. You cannot do all of it. That is too much, but you do have to pick a few to decide what you want to focus on. So what does emphasizing these attributes do for you? Well, it reduces your perceived risk, because that means that when somebody is picking up your bottle, they're like, oh, these guys have attention to detail. I know that. That means they are known for their quality, and that's why I trust them. So you're creating this lineage that makes them trust you, develops credibility by association, clarity for consumers, creates group alignment, points of differentiation, and shared values. And that's the reason why you, as a group with your neighboring distilleries, have to help control the narrative of your collective reputation. So how does the government contribute to managing collective reputation? What do they do for us? They do regulations, right? Yeah, labeling regulations. Anything else? Naming, yeah. So what we like to call standards of identity, which are literally the minimum standards which you must meet in order to call something like, for example, a Scotch in Scotland or Canadian whiskey in Canada. We all understand that? Now, there's also something called a geographic indicator, which I will probably refer to as a GI moving forward. I'm going to apologize for this. Who's heard of a GI before? Who's heard of it in relation to whiskey before? Who knows that it's a hot topic? So I accidentally stumbled upon this. I started this dissertation years ago, and recently it's become a little bit more topical, which I will talk about more at length. But what a GI is, it's a geographic indicator, and it is a legal guarantee of origin. So that means that it is a guarantee that it comes from the place and represents the place from which it is from, which is different from a standards of identity. That is the minimum requirement in order to call it. However, a GI is the connection to the geographic place that it is from. There are different types of GI within GI itself, including a PGI or a PDO. However, in the States, for whatever reason, you guys have gone down a very similar road, but different, where bourbon is actually a distinctive product of the US. So it is similar, however, slightly different. And when it comes to American single malt whiskey, that goes back to more of a standards of identity. So Canada has a GI, Scotch whiskey has a GI, and a lot of other places around the world are actually looking to establish GIs, which I don't always think is the best reason thing, but we will get to that in a few minutes. There are other ways that you can help to format and protect your collective reputation. If the government is helping you out, that's great. If the government is aligned with what you want to do, that is fantastic. But there are other intellectual property tools that you can use to create a more positive collective reputation. And these are incidences where you, for example, want to highlight certain attributes from where you are from. And maybe other people in the region are not doing the same thing as you. And this can be done from several ways, 2 different ways in particular that I will highlight today. A collective mark and a certification mark. A collective mark, and so 2 of these are owned by third-party organizations. And they both certify that their products meet a certain standards. The difference is collective marked is made for groups. So that means that you would be creating a group of distilleries that every single product that you produce have to meet these minimum requirements. A collective mark, the difference is that it is product by product basis. So I'm going to show you a few examples because this may sound a little bit confusing for you. This is a USDA organic certification. This means if you have this, you are part of a collective where everybody who has this, everything you produce is USDA organic. It gives you legal protection. It is differentiated service. It is owned by a third party. And only members who adhere to the code may use this mark. And that is great for a lot of people. The other thing I'm seeing more in the wine and spirits industry is something called a certification trademark. Has anyone seen this logo before? Yeah, 1 person recognized Canadian whiskey. Canadian wine. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. I'm sure someone over here probably recognizes this code. This stands for Vintners Quality Alliance. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, Canadians were having a problem differentiating their wines. And we had all different wines produced, but there was no way of determining which ones were made from international blends and which ones were made from actual local local grapes. And so the wineries came together and said, we're going to create a standard certification trademark that we own as a collective. And only those wines that actually come from local grapes can use this. And with this, it also protects a lot of the local traditions as well. So this is not put forward by the government. This is made by local wineries who now it has been proven that they actually fetch higher price points than those who do not have the VQA signal. In fact, my husband is from France. He does not really understand what VQA is because he's from the land of GIs, but he will not buy an Ontario wine or a Canadian wine unless it has VQA. He doesn't, I asked him, I go, do you know why? And he's like, no, I just know that it's good. Now that's been around since the early 90s. So it's this idea already that it's been implanted in the locals that VQA equals good wines. And that's the reason on a previous slide I said, these things take time. Don't expect to have this recognition overnight. With certification marks, you can do a lot more. Now, here's one for a lot of people here in the whiskey industry. Has anyone seen this before? This excites me. This is an example of a certification trademark. This is the Estate Whiskey Alliance. Why? Because a group of distillers across the U.S. realize that they are producing estate whiskey. And they commissioned a literature review at the University of Kentucky to determine whether estate wines fetch higher price points than those that are non-estate. Do we think that estate wine gets a higher price point? Yeah, they do. Any guesses how much percentage-wise it is higher?
Well, sure, it's interesting.
More than 30, but very close.
Very today.
Higher than 32, but very close.
34.
34, there we go.
That's
So if we've learned that in wine, you get 34% more money for producing an estate wine, why aren't we valuing our whiskey in the same way? Do we think consumers like that tie to the environment? Do you think they want to go and know that what they're drinking is actually from the estate? They do. And so they created the Estate Whiskey Alliance. It runs out of the University of Kentucky. And if anyone has any questions about this, I can refer you on to the University of Kentucky. They are fantastic, and I absolutely love what they are doing. So this is an example of a collective reputation who actually are not local to each other, but share something in common. And so they've banded together to create this. This is also available throughout the world. So there's actually a Canadian whiskey that has this trademark as well, and they're looking to go above and beyond. So one of the things I really do like is that they have this certification trademark without the E available as well. Just for my Canadian and British friends. Not that anyone's here from that. But anyways, so where does a shared reputation exist for distilleries? This can exist in many different ways, geographically, through craftsmanship, through characteristics, through agricultural products. I've given you the example of estate distilleries. Maybe it's distilleries with altitude. Maybe it's distilleries there's so many different ways that you can establish a collective reputation. It is not just from where you were located necessarily. But there's also a strength and a weakness from this. And I put this slide up there with caution. And I talked about earlier how a lot of places were trying to create their own GI or geographic indicator. I don't know, has anyone noticed that I have the same thing on the positive and the negative? Anyone notice what it is? It increases barriers to entry. The thing is that GIs were originally formed for the idea of preserving tradition and preserving heritage. And they didn't want people to change the way people looked at their product. That Scotch whiskey, do you want to change that and innovate it from what people already know and love? No, you don't want to. Do you have an idea? When someone says Scotch whiskey, you have an idea of what's already there. When somebody says Irish whiskey, it's the same thing. So there is this idea that if you suddenly have a GI and you're not protecting an established tradition or an established style, or people don't even know what it is, then what are you really protecting? And then you're increasing the barriers to entry, you're increasing the costs on top of this, and then you're also inhibiting innovation, because maybe further down the line, somebody might be able to figure out what the style is. So you need to be very, very careful in actually finding out what your regional style is, if that's what you're looking for, what you offer. Like, what is whiskey from Texas? What is whiskey from Massachusetts? How do we differentiate ourselves? What is our style? And that's what you need to protect. What makes you different? What is your point of differentiation? Because you can have a lot of positivity to creating a certification trademark or a GI. However, the negatives also are definitely there. If you do not understand what makes you different, you probably need to reevaluate that. What do you want people to think of? What's the first thing you want people to think about? And that's what you want to protect eventually. So what are some obstacles while navigating a collective reputation? These things on the left-hand side, not a lot you can do with all the time. Trade agreements, trade barriers, supply chain, these are all issues that will come across no matter what. But on the right-hand side, I made a list of things that from my studies, I think are the biggest obstacles when creating reputation. It's making people care. That is actually the hardest thing you will do. Has anyone ever noticed a problem, wanted to fix it? And you're like, guys, I got the solution. And people are just, yeah, I got something else going on. No? Has anyone else experienced that before? Just me? All right. People don't always have the time or energy to care. This will be the biggest obstacle because you can actually identify who you are, identify your region, identify your style, come up with a solution and say, this is what we're going to do to change our collective reputation. Let's get on it, guys. And if nobody else cares, where is that going to go? Absolutely nowhere. And that's where it gets a little bit scary. And that leads to my next point is having consensus. So some of these GIs have applied. Some of these areas in Europe have applied for GIs. And I'm reading through the news and I'm seeing that only 40% of the distilleries have joined the guild, and the guild are the people who have applied for these GIs. And I'm thinking, you don't even have a majority of people who want this necessarily. And that's where it kind of becomes scary, because if you don't have the majority who are into what you are doing, then it becomes a problem. So you need to make sure that your region is on board, or your area, or whoever you're sharing collective reputation, all have the same goal and really want to actually make a change. And the last one is that ensuring budget is available. A lot of these things are really amazing. You can do a certification trademark for relatively cheap compared to changing regulation. I will say that much. You can create that change, but you also have to be willing to put a little bit of money in. It's not that expensive, but you do need to have a budget. And the reason is because you can create a certification trademark, but let's go back to what we have here. I think 2 people in the audience had heard of this before. It takes time. It takes energy. You have to educate people about what you are doing. And every single person who comes from your distillery, you have to educate them on why your region is different, on why your product is different from somebody down the road. So it is important that when you are doing this, that you have to make sure that you have the idea, I'm sorry, I went back too far there, that you have a budget and that everybody is definitely on board. Okay, so how do you improve your collective reputation? On the left-hand side, I have some suggestions that are a little bit easier. Identify those with whom you share a collective reputation. Pretty simple. Discuss whether you're interested in improving your collective reputation. Just because you share a reputation with somebody else doesn't mean they also want to change it, right? Articulate your points of weakness. Where do we really struggle? Decide to build trust through authenticity or quality or both. And what do you want to highlight? Is it that we are producing with local grain? Is it that we are making products that are grain to glass? Is it that we are authentically from this region? Is it that we actually express this region ourselves? Is it that you're not buying from another producer? There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. The question is, how do you want to do it? And if you choose to, you can move on to the second column, which is choose an intellectual property system, which suits your group if appropriate. Launch the intellectual property system, showcasing the attributes, and educate consumers in the meaning behind your intellectual property system or the attributes you want to highlight. Continue to grow and do not expect instant returns. Again, this takes a long time. The Estate Whiskey Alliance is already a year old. It takes time to develop a collective reputation. Italy wasn't known for fine leather overnight. So here is your bingo card. The way I best like to look at it is you want to establish trust. You have to pick a basket, whether it is quality or authenticity or both. And then you get to decide which one of these attributes you want to put into your bingo card. Once you've figured out what best represents your area, region, or whoever you share a collective reputation with, you then have to decide what makes you different based on these attributes, and you have to convey it to your consumer. And it is the best way that you can actually control the narrative on how people perceive your product. This being said, the one thing I will warn you on is you want to put the barrier entry as high, so imitations don't come on and everyone is authentic. But if you put it too high, you also may buy by yourself. And if there's only 2 or 3 people on board, it's not going to develop collective reputation. It is a difficult thing to navigate. This is not a one-size-fits-all. There are regions around the world who struggle to figure this out. If you have any other additional questions, please come talk to me. I'm more than happy to talk to you guys about this at length. Thank you very much for actually listening. Oh, I'm not quite thank you. My husband's mostly pleased because he didn't have to listen to this for the 50th time or just listen to me talk about collective reputation yet again. So he thinks you as well. But when you think about your region and what you want consumers to think about is control your own narrative, understand those around you who share a collective reputation, set achievable goals. Do not climb Mount Everest overnight. Think long-term, not short-term, and create trust with your consumer. This is the biggest things. A rising tide lifts all boats. We've heard this before, but you want to do this together. You want to create a community. You want to support each other, and you want to figure out what do we do best that no one else can do. Somebody said this earlier, but my favorite phrase is you're never going to make better champagne than the Champenoise, right? You never will. So you have to make the best product that you can in your area and figure out how that makes you uniquely authentic with your own different quality. And that is the idea when establishing your own collective reputation. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed it.